Hello, David Thornton here. Today I want to show you how to make my chicken a la king. It's really good stuff. All right, let me go over the ingredients with you. All right, first thing we got to do is cook the chicken. I've got just one large chicken breast, boneless, skinless chicken breast, and I'm gonna boil it for about 20 minutes. You need to let it boil for about 20 minutes and then take a knife and cut it in the center, in the thickest part, and make sure it's not pink on the inside. Usually takes about 20 minutes, maybe a little bit more. But I'm gonna put the chicken breast in the saucepan with water, a little bit of dried minced onion, and some salt and pepper. That'll take care of the chicken. Once it's done, we'll set it to the side, and then I'm just gonna break it apart. I like my chicken a la king to have shredded chicken in it, not chopped. If you prefer chopped, just cut the chicken up into little cubes. All right, for the chicken a la king, we're gonna use, I've got a half of a medium-sized bell pepper. We're gonna chop that up. I've got some onion here, some yellow onion, and I'm gonna cut a couple of pieces off this. We're gonna chop up about 1/3 to a half a cup, somewhere in that range. I've got one large clove of garlic I'm gonna press into it. And then you'll need a half a cup of butter, one stick. Now I use unsalted butter. So if you use salted butter, just put a little bit less salt in there. We're gonna use a teaspoon of salt and a half a teaspoon of black pepper and a little dash of cayenne. And I may add a little bit more salt at the end, but if you use salted butter, just bow up on the salt a little bit to begin with so you don't overdo it. All right, so we got a half a cup of butter. I've got a half a cup of all-purpose flour. I've got a 8-ounce package of fresh Baby Bella mushrooms, 2 cups, 16 ounces of half and half, one 14.5-ounce can of chicken broth, and then I've got a jar of pimentos that I've been using out of, and we'll use about a good tablespoon and a half of the pimentos. Now this dish, when we get through with it, it looks really good on the plate. It's got the green, the red. It's kind of a Christmas looking dish, a seasonal looking dish, but of course you don't have to cook it. You can cook it any time of the year you want. It is delicious. Now also, you can serve this over noodles, white egg noodles or medium egg noodles, rice, or toast. I prefer just a piece of white bread toasted. That's the way we always ate it as when I was growing up. And if you use the noodles, you might just make sure you put enough salt in it, because the noodles are kind of bland and they kind of take from the flavor. So I prefer the toast myself, but it's good either way. Just if you use the rice or the noodles, just make sure you season it really good. All right, I'm gonna get this chicken going, and so while it's cooking, I'll prep all this other stuff. Now we're just gonna take the saucepan and put enough water in there to cover the chicken. And like I said, I always start with about 20 minutes and then check it. About a 1/4 teaspoon of each. And then we're just gonna put the chicken breast in there. All right, we got the chicken breast in there. We're gonna bring that to a heavy boil, then turn it down to medium, low, or whatever. Just make sure it's still slightly boiling for 20 minutes. And don't forget to put the minced onion in there. Just about a half a tablespoon, just enough to give it some flavor. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and prep these few vegetables we got here. The chicken's going. And we got about 16 minutes left on that, so I'm gonna get these vegetables prepped. Now I like to leave the stems in, but just cut the dirty part of the stem off of these mushrooms. Leave as much of that mushroom in there as you can. All right, the chicken's been boiling for 20 minutes. So let's take a look at it. We're just gonna take the fork and a good sharp knife and cut into the thickest part of it. That's good and white. I see just a barely spot down there in the very bottom that's just a tiny bit pink. So we're gonna let it cook for about 2 more minutes and then cut it off and just let it cool. Go ahead and set the timer for 2 minutes. All right, we'll give that 2 minutes and it should be ready then. All right, that's another 2 minutes on that chicken breast. It should be good and done now. We're just gonna turn that off and set it back here and go ahead and get started on our sauce. So, we're gonna put this on medium heat and go ahead and throw the 1 stick, which is a 1/2 cup of unsalted butter in. Let that start melting. All right, what we're gonna do next is, when that butter gets melted about halfway, we're gonna throw all these vegetables in here and just let them cook until they get good and tender. Probably about 6 or 7 minutes it usually ends up cooking. So the butter's starting to melt. I'll turn it up a little bit more to get that butter to go ahead and melt. I'm gonna go ahead and put all the vegetables in. Now you can see here I got that whole package of mushrooms, 1/2 of a medium bell pepper chopped, and 2 good slices off a medium onion. It's about 1/3 to 1/2 cup of onion. I think the mushroom turned my heat up. Very sensitive controls on this convection. I love this convection range top. Works like gas and electric both. All right, we're gonna leave that there for the chicken. I got 1 large clove of garlic. I had kind of a good sized one and a small one that came loose with it, so I'm just gonna put them both in there. All right, we're gonna end up cooking this for about 7 minutes or so. Pretty much medium to high heat. I got this on 6. And we're gonna let that chicken cool down a little bit so we can handle it. I'm gonna go ahead and take it out and set it on the chopping board. Once it cools down, I'll just take my fingers and break that apart. It'll just be like shredded chicken. And yeah, I know it's a shame pouring that down the sink, but it's not really strong broth. It's not strong enough to use in here, so we could add some bouillon to it and use it, but we're just going to use a can, a 14.5-ounce can of chicken broth. All right, we're going to let this cook for about 6 or 7 minutes and see how tender it looks at that point. All right, the vegetables have been cooking for right at 7.5, 8 minutes. Now we're going to turn the heat down a little bit. And we're going to go ahead and add the flour. Now I've got a 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour. We're going to put that in there. And we want to just fold this around until all that flour is soaked up by the butter. You don't want to see dry flour. Just keep stirring it until you don't see any dry flour left. Yeah, just keep stirring it until you don't see any dry flour left. It should all be just blended together. It's basically a butter flour roux. I mean, I've got this on about 2.5 right now. All right, now that we got the butter and flour all mixed together, at this point, we need to just add all our liquid. So we're going to go ahead and add the 2 cups of 1/2 and 1/2. And as we add this, we're going to turn this up to about 6.5. So we're going to go ahead and add all the 1/2 and 1/2 and the whole can of chicken broth. All right, now let's go ahead. I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of salt, a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, and a good little dash of cayenne. All right, we'll stir that in. Now, while I was waiting on the chicken to cook, I went ahead and got a piece of white bread toast and my toaster back here, ready to go. So, while this is heating up, you're going to need to stir it almost constantly. I'm going to turn it down to 6. We're going to stir this for probably right around 10 minutes until it gets thick and just barely starts to boil. So just keep an eye on it, keep stirring, don't let it stick to the bottom, and as it thickens, we want it to just barely come to a boil. Still really thin right now, so it'll take almost 10 minutes for it to heat up and come to a boil that's on my stove top. I said I'm cooking on 6. We're just going to keep stirring this until it gets thick. All right, while this is heating up, you pretty much got to stir it constantly, but you can walk away from it for just a little bit. So we're going to work on this chicken breast real quick. There's just a little bit of fat on here that I don't want in there. We're going to trim that off. Not much, just a little bit. Nobody wants that on their plate. All right. Now we're just going to take this chicken and just shred it. Still just a little bit warm. Still okay over here. You can see the color of this from all the seasoning and stuff. It's got some color to it now, and it looks really good. We put the pimentos in there to add some red to it. And anyway, it's just a nice looking dish. One chicken breast ends up being a pretty doggone good pile of meat. It's plenty for this, because we like the sauce. It is delicious. It's starting to steam good, so we're well on the way. We're about 5 minutes into it at this point. It's starting to thicken already, but we want to barely see it boil. Make sure these chunks are not too big. As that sauce thickens, it becomes easier and easier to stick. It's definitely starting to thicken. Just about 3 or 4 more minutes and we'll be there. About 6 to 7 minutes into it. And you can tell it's starting to get a little thick, but it hasn't came to a boil yet. So we just want to see a few bubbles in it. According, we should have about 2 or 3 more minutes to heating it up before it starts boiling. All right, it's not quite there yet, but almost. Just another minute or 2. It's definitely getting thicker, but hasn't boiled yet. All right, we're gonna go ahead and drop this piece of toast so it'll be ready. I'm getting really close. All right, it's almost there. It's not quite boiling yet, but we're gonna go ahead and add a good tablespoon maybe a tablespoon and a half of pimentos. And I'm gonna hit it with just another dash of salt. And we should be through with the salt and pepper. It's looking really good. Barely starting to boil. That's what we've been waiting on. Once it starts to boil, you don't have to give it much longer, maybe just a minute or so to make sure it's all consistently heated, because once it boils, it's really not going to thicken anymore. It's pretty much done all it's going to do, but it really looks, it's perfect. It's delicious. All right, our sauce is started to boil, and it's pretty much as thick as it's going to get. So we're going to turn this down, make sure we don't burn it. I'm going to put it on 2.5. Now I'm going to go ahead and add the chicken. Stir that in real good and just let it heat for another minute or so. It's pretty much hot as a baijiu, so you ain't gotta wait long. All right, now that we've got everything ready, let's take our toast. We're just going to spread a little of this over the top. I'm going to turn it off. Well, I hope you can see all those colors in there. But this is Dave's Chicken a la King. This stuff is delicious. I appreciate you watching. I really hope you enjoy the food. And I gotta say, this Chicken a la King is really good stuff. Let me know what you think about it. And thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.